Andrew, what's up, dog?
Morning.
How you been, man?
Pretty good.
Yeah? Welcome to Minnesota Well Done. I'm Christos, and I have one of my good friends, Andrew Vuong, who's sous chefing it up right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's sous chefing it up at French Meadow in Minneapolis, correct?
Yeah. It's where I cut my teeth.
Yeah. Now, one thing about you is everywhere that I go, I learn that you've worked there. Usually, you've been everywhere, man. Or maybe not everywhere, but you've been most places,
Yeah.
right? Like you were at. I met you at the Lexington, and you were CDC when I was there, and then you moved to sous chef. Or
I think I was sous pretty much the whole time.
okay,
But working closely with the whole team. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I see it as just one. I don't know. At the time we were there, it's like from open till I met you. Like I mean, in a lot of development, from scratch, and just everybody did everything.
yeah, that's a huge thing about the Lex is that it was a very large team, right? So like if I was CDC at some 6-person kitchen, in Minneapolis, it would be a very different responsibility than even a sous chef at the Lexington. And I'm not, I like the aspect of a hierarchy, right? I think that it's important to, the system of a kitchen, but I really like the way that you operated, where you clearly had that team mindset, and it was about even the newest person, who at the time was me, was very important to the inner workings of everything. So you worked at the Lexington, and you also, so the last job that I had, I was at Public, and you were at Public for a while, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And so I think that even when I got in there, a lot of your recipes were still, I don't know if they were still in use, but you had a great influence on that menu.
Yeah, it's possible. I think the food changed after Justin Sutherland arrived, but I liked that place a lot. It's a very beautiful space, and good equipment. I think it had the potential to and it did a lot of great things. The busiest night I experienced there was during the Blues Fest in Mears Park, and I think we had like 700 dinner covers.
Wow, dude. Just for dinner?
Yeah, just for dinner.
Oh, man. That's, for anybody who's not in the business, that's a lot to do over dinner. That's over maybe a 4-hour period?
Yeah.
700 covers. Holy crap. Yeah, we never did numbers like that.
Yeah, it was crazy. Tears were shed, but we powered through.
Yeah. Well, it's great to have you on, man. It's great to have you on. When I met you at the Lexington, we kind of gravitated towards each other just by I think that our outlooks on food and on life are fairly similar. You know what I mean? Like, when I started to work the line, you're like, oh, you got the moves, right? You said you got the moves. And that kind of like, that definitely I synced up with that, because that's how I look at it too, is like, oh, yeah, I've done the training, right? And I've put in the work, and now the stuff that I just do regularly is like, it's noticeably experienced, but I'm just doing it. It's like I'm coming in on my first day and I'm just doing what I know. And so let's talk a little bit about how you look at kind of the preparation of food and some of the discipline that goes into it. Behind you have the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, right, by Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
And you're a fairly experienced martial artist. And for some people, when they get into cooking, I feel like this tends to be more men, but definitely women too. There's a certain like similarity between martial arts and cooking, right? There is an art and a applicability to it that necessitates training and really shows beauty. Can you talk a little bit about like your your move into cooking? Like,
Sure.
yeah.
I see them as very related. Cooking requires a lot of movement, but also focus. Like a person has to be pretty clear-minded and intuitive almost. And that's where you have your techniques. You have your tools, and you have the movements that go with it. But when a person cooks, there has to be a fluidity. Like, you can't just be robotic and be like, oh, knife goes on cutting board, carrot in left hand. There has to be a flow of energy from yourself, like using your mind, like everything connected. And you're connected to that ingredient and what it will become, and your movements have to be fluid.
Yeah.
And that leads to, it's expression.
Wow, that's really that we're starting the episode off super profound, because I fully agree. And it's like, we went out and we shot arrows the other day, and that's kind of like a distilled version of that, right? Where your motion has to be fluid, and the longer that you hold that bow, the more that your mind gets into it, and the more mechanical it becomes, and the less accurate you become, right? And there is definitely a balance between getting the moves down and then dancing. Right. Like, that's I really think that's what you were talking about when you were talking about the moves, right? Like, that it wasn't that my cuts were good. It's that when I walked to the line, and then it's like I hit it in the spatula, and then I had all my if I think I was on like a burger station, all the patties were in a row, and then flip them in succession, and there was a rhythm to it.
Yes.
Right, and that's very important, especially in a kitchen like the Lexington, right, where you have this huge kitchen and you have tickets going off, and your timing has to be right. And I think it's really important for people who are either getting into cooking, or are kind of like on that, they're just moving up, they're like leveling up, right? Like when you get into that more elevated style kitchen, such as Victory or the Lexington, or really anything like that. There's a lot of restaurants like that in the Twin Cities now. When you level up to that level, I think it's important to make that distinction that you're not there as a machine, right? Because that we had people there who treated themselves as machines,
right?
And you could see it in the content of the food.
But there's exactly, because food is a living thing, and like it in the way that it starts off very cerebral. Like, when you learn the technique and the science, yes, everything will work according to science, but then for it to reach the characteristics that you're looking for, like, you really have to be in tune with it, like in harmony. Like when you're building a sauce and like watching it pull together, like it comes by feel.
Yeah. Wow, that's I love that because, as you know, I'm a sauce guy. Like, I'm really started at D-Spot. That's where I started doing my first sauce work. And I remember the first time I saw my roux bloom, and like, it was one of those things where I was still pretty young when I was doing it, and I definitely had a more like a cerebral approach to everything. Like, how is it working scientifically, and yada yada yada. I could go. I wanted to know the science, right? Which, like you said, is important. But what Darren did is he was like, shut the fuck up. Right, and watch the roux, right, and then I saw the change. When a roux finally blooms and it becomes like one layer, and it's like waving. I'll never forget that in my whole life. I'll never forget that. And then I think that the application of that kind of cooking is important throughout the entire day, right, on every sauce that you ever do. And it's just so constant, like when you're doing when you're doing a deglaze, right? There's a certain time when you want to do the deglaze. Everything's been caramelized, and you have this nice, what's it called, a ronde, a nice ronde on the bottom of the pan, and then you hit it with whatever you're deglazing it, right? And I especially like to do that with with wine or with vinegar because it's a little bit more expressive, right. Honestly, and you see that change happen instantly, and the second that it happens that it's going to be delicious. So I love that you talk about that food is a living thing. You're also working with people, right? So you have a very interesting way of leading, and also what's it called when you actually do it. You have an interesting way of leading and executing, right? Your execution is phenomenal, and you just kind of do it by doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you can't overthink, and it's because everything's adjustable. There's like, you limit yourself by being, oh, that needs to be there all the time. It's like, okay, I'll try it over there, and it seems to work, but is there another way to shift it? And I think I watched your episode with Aaron, and you guys were talking about how, like, you set up the stations of, about like keeping pans on the back burners or in the oven, like, and everybody's different. Everybody has a different body type, the way they reach for stuff. They're, like, it's to each station for each player, everybody has a different setup, and no one way is necessarily right.
Yeah.
It's just what's the best for the operator. But yeah, I mean, you can still achieve the same results, with different setups. But for me, like, it's as in martial arts, it's the fastest, method from point A to point B. And as a leader, like, I prefer to be like a fire support role. It's, if it truly is a team working as one body, like, if one station is starting to run out of supplies, and like, that person's busy, putting up dishes, the best interest of the whole kitchen is for somebody to move and procure those supplies as immediately for that one spot, even if you don't work on that station, and it's like, oh, it's not some people are like, oh, that's not my business, not my problem.
But
your whole kitchen will suffer.
Dude, I love you so much because you're so you're so imaginative with the way that you explain things. But a fire support, that's exactly what you would do at the Lex. That is exactly what you would do at the Lex. Like, I would see you over on Diane's station, and then I'd see, you with your hat and your suspenders, you'd be like, over on my station, you'd be like, what do you need, chef? And you were quick, fast, fluid with everything. Wow, that's a great metaphor. That's a great explanation. I think that one of the things that most interested me about, like, your style of cooking, I guess, is that I would never see you until I needed you. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, I need this, and then, like, I turn around, and there you are, and you've done all the prep, and it's a lot of the things at the Lexington were kind of like your creation, and it just, I don't know, man. You definitely have when you say expression, I think that you definitely expressed everything about cooking while we were there together, at least.
Yeah, and thanks. And it's also thanks to my mentors. Like, this is the old way of learning to be in a kitchen. Like, I trained under a French chef when I first started. His name was Serge Devesa. It was at a hotel near the Minneapolis airport called the Sofitel.
Okay.
And which is like a luxury hotel group. Sadly, they're not here in Minneapolis anymore, but it was high standard.
Yeah.
And this guy was, he was real deal. Like, from Marseille.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he actually, after I left his tutelage, he even went further to Lyon and became a master chef.
Wow. So you learned from the big dogs, man. Yeah. I mean, I definitely would say that I learned from some big dogs, but not quite on the... There's a discipline to that, right? That I don't think people truly understand. It's like, kind of the ongoing joke now is that, like, oh, you think, you're this, crazy hardcore guy because you're a chef. And I think that discipline, people don't truly recognize where that comes from, right?
And it's for, it's especially, when, like, the way that chefs, especially chef owners, they view their kitchen as a part of them, like,
right.
Every dish that goes out, goes to a person who trusts you to prepare something delicious for them, and like they're putting in their body. So it's up to us as a responsibility to prepare it well, conscious. And every little thing counts, And back then, my first chef, he was like, "Hey, I need a ladle, specifically a 2-ounce ladle for plating right now. So I need you to find me that."
Yeah.
Like it was, it's a communication that was really important. I think we did a lot of that at the Lex too. Like it was almost too heavy on the communication at times, but that's, it's a key.
Yeah.
For, when you have so many moving parts.
Yeah. Well, there's a balance, right? There's always this dichotomy that we're working with, right? Like we started the episode off talking about how, like, it's not mechanical and it's expressive and it's dancing, but it's also not dancing and expressive and mechanical, right? You have to find the balance of that, right? And the same goes with the communication, right? If I'm spending my whole night calling out tickets, then I'm not spending my whole night focused on the food. Right. And then if I'm spending my whole night focused on the food, then my timing is going to be off with everybody around me. So there's always, especially with a place like the Lexington, where it's a galley style kitchen. You have, I don't know how on a busy night you'd have eight chefs on the line, not counting the pass. Right. And to get all that linked up, it does take communication, but it also takes what we were talking about earlier of being in it, of feeling the flow, of, it's like, it got to a point where I had worked every station. So when a ticket came in, I knew how long those things took. Right. So I didn't need anybody else to tell me when they were going to, I'm going to have that steak in 8 minutes. Like, oh, no, I know, doc.
Yeah. And then I like, Jack, he's old school too, and he's all about the details. Even if that steak appeared on the pass, in 8 minutes, I mean, he's got hawk eyes. I mean, that guy can see the details and the quality, one cup of mashed potatoes, if it hits the pass and he doesn't see steam rising off it, he's like, hey, let's run it again.
Yeah. No, that was something that I definitely caught from him. Like, almost a reminder to be very detail oriented. It's not like this food going out in 20 minutes kind of like thought process is fairly new, right? Like, I'm not saying that places that do that, the quick food aren't food places, but it's like you can't have that mindset when you're working at a place like the Lexington. Right, you have to be okay with longer ticket times.
Yeah,
because like you said, if that potato isn't hot, right? Even the baked potatoes or even the ribs, if one thing is off, we have to. It adds a lot of time. Yeah. It's not like going to I don't want to compare it to something that's absolutely not like it. But let's even say like. Well, let's say the Gnome, right? I just talked with Aaron, and one of their big things right now is they're trying to keep it under 20-minute ticket times, especially with COVID. There's a lot of changes, right? The difference in the kind of cooking that they're doing is massive.
Yeah.
It's massive. So to harken back to the detail orientation, I think was a very important thing that Jack reminded me of, is that I don't. It's going to take another 5 minutes. Well, for one, fuck you, right, for not having it right,
Yeah.
But also, that's fine. Another 5 minutes is fine.
Yeah, and each ingredient needs its personal love.
Yeah.
Like some things are fast, some things are slow.
Yeah.
Like grilled asparagus, extremely quick. Sauteed greens.
Yeah.
Like a cheese plate, very fast.
Yeah.
And it's just syncing up with the rest of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that syncing up is like, I keep going back to something that Bruce Lee says, and it's actually one of his most famous quotes, so it's not like I'm, digging too deep, but where he says, be like water, right? Like that is very much what that kitchen was like.
Yeah.
Definitely. And most kitchens, well, no, that's how all kitchens are, right? And you have a different container, you need to be different, right? And that's so important. So important, especially when people are spending, over $100 on a plate.
Right.
Right. Not to always bring it back to money, but that it's just like that plate is valuable. We're not just throwing something together so somebody can go back out to the steel mine and have nutrients, right? That's not what we're doing.
And that's where it requires skilled operation.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, one thing that I keep bringing up with you, and maybe I'm just being a little, whiny pants about it, but it's like, if that skilled operation is necessary, right? Don't you believe that there should be that they should be paid well?
Yeah, I do agree with, the situation of money is in all kitchens. It is I don't know. It's a long paradox.
Yeah.
Even nowadays, I know servers. They can still work 5-hour shifts and make like maybe $200, $300. And it's not necessarily grueling labor. Like they have more risk nowadays with COVID, but
Yeah.
as compared to like the tasks in a single day, it's the cooks really do go through the ringer.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like at the moment, I guess the pay has increased a little bit because of the high demand. A lot of people have left the industry.
Yeah.
But it is not a very good paying job. And the old glory of being a chef, or like the things that people used to wear as almost a medal of honor, was to we don't do this for money, we are artists.
Yeah. Well, okay, here's my argument against that, right? So what we just talked about is we weren't artists, right? We're skilled laborers.
Yeah.
Right? It takes skill, and it takes time and money that is invested into it to get to the level that we were at, right? And artist or not, right? Like if an artist makes a good art piece, right, and markets it well, then he makes money.
Right.
You understand? And like if we make an art piece and we market it well, we make at most $17 an hour, right?
Yeah.
Maybe $20 an hour now, maybe. And it's like then you can go and do hard labor somewhere else and put your foot in the door and make $25 an hour.
Right. Yeah, I've been browsing the job market just to see what it looks like lately, and an entry level delivery driver for say FedEx or UPS is probably like 25 to 27 an hour with benefits.
Yeah.
And working in the kitchen, it's when you see something like that, it's kind of frustrating because you put a lot of time in what you do, and to the point where like you should be of higher value because of all that experience you've gained.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's possible maybe as people realizing this when we spend so much time, where do I go to where I will attract, or like where I will be valued my worth?
Yeah.
I don't really see it existing in restaurants necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I think we should take a break and we should dive deeper into this a little bit, because I think that there is answers for people. There is, because it's gotten to a point where it's hard to live now, right? Like the cost of living has gone up. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll get right back into it.
Sounds good.
Cool. www.patreon.com/Minnesota Well Done. That's where I'm at. That's how I'm funding the show. I just put new content up. It is the second part of the unboxing and tasting of Adam's chocolate. It has his special, unique flavors that he came up with on his own, and they are super delicious. There's a little bit of an ASMR aspect to it, but you'll have to check it out. Go to www.patreon.com/Minnesota Well Done, and start giving to the show a little bit, and you can see extra content like that. I'm going to do tours of kitchens where I know chefs. I'm not just gonna sneak into kitchens or anything like that. Also, there are 3-ring binders in the mail to me, and then I get the Minnesota Well Done stamp on the 24th, and once I get that, we can start stamping them and sending them out. It's been a cool process to find affordable 3-ring binders and make it so that everything will work smoothly, right? Like at first you gotta, are we going to send one recipe at a time? We're going to send 5 recipes at a time, and what chefs are willing to do it and what aren't. But it's all coming together, and expect your 3-ring binders soon. If you haven't gotten your mugs yet, it's most likely because you haven't given me your address. And all you got to do is message me on the Patreon or any of the emails that I have available on the site. And once that's done, you'll have your mug and you'll have your 3-ring binder, and we can keep adding content. Thank you guys so much for your patronage. It makes the show doable, right? Otherwise, I would be floundering in debt. But you guys are keeping it alive, and I really appreciate it. We're going to get back to the episode. Thank you so much. I will see you next week.
Before I woke up with a dream that you and I were in like an obstacle course.
Really?
It was like a mix between American Ninja Warrior and the old American Gladiators.
I love it.
It was like running across like a balance beam over water, and then like jumping on tiles, and then there was like a part where you like grabbed like throwing axes and threw them into a target. And then there was like like the big bouncy house like compressed air material. Like there was one wall where it was like, it worked like an upright tube of toothpaste. So it's like if you didn't grab the top of the ledge right away, it would push air into it and make it raise higher, forcing a person to like jump even higher and then like grab the ledge. And then like, I don't know.
You were stressing out a little bit, bud. Jeez.
But
it's all good, man. It's all chill. It's all relaxed. It's just a conversation.
Yeah.
Pop those back on. Let's get going to it.
But I don't know. Crazy fun things.
No, that's fun.
Yeah.
And we'd kill it at something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, we'd kill it at something like that. Talk about movement, right? All right, so we were talking about... What were we talking about? We were talking about pay scale, right? So, I brought it up probably almost every episode. I've talked about being restaurant adjacent, right? And I think that somebody who starts, right, the way that we started, where you're in a restaurant, you have a chef, there is a certain type of security and safety, and you can recognize it, right? It's memorable. You just feel like you're in the flow. That's not the only way to cook, right? In fact, historically, right, that's never how people cooked, right? And so I think when people detach themselves from the restaurant industry itself and kind of find their own specific way to cook and to both cook, market, make money, like if they're going to be a personal chef, or they're going to be a caterer, or they're going to start a food truck, right? That there is a certain element of success and happiness that those people are starting to see, because what we talk about in not getting enough money for what we do is not really anybody's decision, right? It's not like Jack was going, I don't want to pay these guys. I mean, I guess I don't know if he was saying that, but from what I understood, the money just wasn't there.
No, and same. It's just being an employee.
Yeah.
You know, when you're an employee, you work for a business, you work for other people, and you are paid as they set.
Right.
And even if you reach the top of the chain, you can become an executive chef, but you're not the owner of the restaurant. You're still capped, by unless there's bonuses by making phenomenal sales.
Yeah.
But we don't see that really happening these days.
Let's dive into these days, right? The reason that, because it's like, this is something that I don't think a lot of people really understand, is how connected to the health of the economy restaurants are, right? Like, when I go into was it you? I think it was you who was talking about it. It might have been Frenchie, but they were talking about how having a good baker and having a good pastry person, there's no money in it anymore. Nobody really buys desserts anymore after 2008, right? After the housing crisis, after the bubble popped, people would go and they would eat, and then you'd be like, well, do you want dessert? And they'd be like, I'm not going to spend another $12 on something that isn't actually giving me sustenance, right?
Yeah.
Especially when I can go to McDonald's and get a 99-cent ice cream cone if I just want a sugar blast, So how is that how you see it as well? Like, you see people having more money, and then the restaurant being able to respond to that just simply because they're willing to spend more money?
Well, I think nowadays people, even if they have money to spend, and have the ability to go out and enjoy themselves and have a meal, they're not necessarily looking for those $35 plates or higher.
Right.
I don't really foresee a plate being more than $25 in this time. It's because it's now about the necessity of food as compared to like having luxury.
Yeah. Well, yeah, okay, yeah. So it used to be a luxury, and now yeah, that's interesting. It is very much more about the necessity of food, and I even see that now that I think, you bring that up, I think about it. I think about what I see on people's Instagrams and what's on their Facebook, and it's much more of like, we're feeding the community, or we're trying to get out. It's not this, I don't know what it was 6 years ago, where it's like, I did this sauce on this, and there's like glitter behind it, and there's gold flowers on the cake, and it's like, that has just it's really died out, at least in the public eye, man. And I kind of like that, right? Because that's what food is, though.
Yeah, no frills. I mean,
yeah.
At the end of the day, or like when you're having a meal, it's you're putting in your body.
Yeah.
And you can still make it look beautiful, but do you need gold foil? Not really.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you definitely don't. In fact, I think that takes away from the dish when you add something like gold foil, right? I talked with Christina a little bit about it, and about how, not about gold foil, but we talked about how love is really the lord of the kitchen, right? Like, the Greeks say chaos is the lord of the battlefield. You could say that Aphrodite is the lord of the kitchen. It's about giving to people, and once you lose that, the food becomes noticeably worse.
Yeah. And I mean, this is just the time that we live in. Fine dining, it's struggling. Like how many places have closed,
Yeah.
and if I wonder, if those chefs are still going to stay in the field, or they go. I mean, and if they do, they will have to change their concepts.
Yeah.
Because if we consider this as essential work, and not everybody has money to buy food that's already prepared for them.
Yeah.
So I feel like if restaurants are still going to exist, it might be all on takeout standard.
Yeah. Well, here's what I've talked to you a little bit about my theory about the whole fine dining takeout kind of relationship, right? I think that the takeout is going to improve, right? And the fine dining is going to I don't even want to say deprove, but descale, right? They're going to descale. It's not about having a $100 plate and doing this crazy stuff. It's like there's going to have to be a middle to find, right? We see all these different examples of ways to cook that are more traditional, right? Like on TV, on Chef's Table, Chef's Table is probably my favorite one because I think they really capture the movement, right? Like we were saying earlier. But like you look at there's a episode of A Turkish Guy, right? Which is a lot of that food has very cultural similarities to the Greeks, just simply because of the Ottoman Empire and the geographic location. But you look, and every time they're cooking, there's 6 people in the shot, right? Even if he's just like flipping, I don't remember the name of the bread, but it's similar to a pita. Even if he's just flipping a pita, putting some meat on it, and putting a toothpick through it, there's 6 guys behind him, right? And they're all talking, and one's smoking a cigar, and they're like blah 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 blah. And then when they're drying, there's a scene where they're drying tomatoes, right? And there's the mother is there, the child is there, I think that a move towards that, right, where you have this huge, we're not making one plate for Johnny come lately at the table who wants this specific thing at this specific temperature. I think you're looking at, to have high quality food, you're looking at more of a communal experience, and we are definitely moving towards that. I can say that myself, I've done probably 6, and this was during the beginning of COVID and during like kind of the riots and the social unrest, but I've done like 6 things where our cooking, people still had, in certain ones, people still had to pay for it, but we just made the food and then we gave it out, right? And then, and did it that way. There was no, oh, no, I want this or I want this. We made a vegetarian option, we made a vegan option, and then we made the regular option, and you chose between the two.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like in countries like Turkey and just countries outside of the U.S., you have marketplaces. So it's where all of the all the vendors are connected, and it's a community, and it's not like when they when citizens need to go shopping, they go to a marketplace, and and they go often, and and they find everything they need there, and it's an experience. They ingrain with their community. They'll stop at one stall to get vegetables, and the next to buy meat, and the next to buy fish, and the next to buy cheese, and they're not, all these vendors are not in competition with each other because they know that they're all still needed.
Right.
When you have here, all of your restaurants and markets are, they're standalone buildings, and they have distance between each other. And so it's not really tied as a community as I feel like it is competition between restaurants. Like if you have one on a corner of the streets and another one across, like they're in direct competition with each other.
Yeah.
And like the sourcing of our food from around here it's from all over the place.
Yeah.
And as you know, if you were to think about Turkey, I mean, all of the goods that you find in the marketplace are from around their area.
Yeah. I find that that's probably one of my least favorite things about cooking nowadays, I guess. I never really got the experience of cooking with food that is all from, miles away, right? It doesn't matter where I've worked, right? Because it's just not available in some situations, right? Or there's, like at the Lexington, I think we kept coming into a problem of, well, people want, they expect this specific thing, and it's the middle of fucking winter, man. Like, how are we going to make that, a local Minnesota produce? Not even local Minnesota, but oftentimes it's not even from the U.S. Oftentimes it's, filled with wax, given somewhere else and then brought back, and it's just like this clusterfuck of shitty produce, right?
Right, and this is because people they're seeking specific things. But if they were really more in tune with how to eat in Minnesota, you'd have to do it seasonally.
Yeah.
And it's winter time right now. It's a lot of preserved things.
Yeah.
And, like keyword and, it's pickles, it's ferments.
Yeah. That's why I think I have it still up there. Yep, I do. I have the Noma Guide to Fermentation back there, and I think I put the Nordic baking book, right? That's another thing, is like baked goods are a huge winter thing, right? Huge winter thing.
Yeah.
Like what are your flour stores like, right? What are your grain stores like, so that you're going to be able to bake and make it through the winter, right? And then you have large plates of meat for any kind of like hunting or special occasion, right? And that's the same. Like, that's why I was so enamored with Harsey's restaurants, is because he kind of like touched into that, right? Like, no, we can't have a seasonally Italian restaurant. We do not have a Mediterranean climate, right? Like, maybe in the summer we can we can have things like that, but to have a year-round, seasonally local place, it has to be using kind of like that Nordic style, like you said, with preserves, like you said, with fermentation. And I hope that that's one thing that we start to move more and more towards, right?
And it's environmentally conscious and mindful,
right?
And it's could be likely. I mean, I'm not predicting anything, but with COVID, I remember, in the first few months, like there were too many livestock animals being raised, and farmers were coming into a problem where they didn't have enough room to house all of the animals, and and they were spending money on feeding them, but the processing plants were closed. So sadly, a lot of those animals were killed for nothing.
Yeah.
And hundreds of thousands of gallons of milk dumped, which is not, like, it's just so backwards, because they could have done something with it,
right?
But having made those decisions, might have to now we might run into shortages.
Yeah.
And like same with like raising vegetables, the climates are fickle.
Yeah.
And still you have a large population to feed. So not everything's, you shouldn't be eating, like, it's an American luxury to be eating fresh food all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think, people at the beginning of the pandemic were like, see, people are learning, right? Like, we've learned our lesson. I don't think that's the case. I do, however, see now that I've gone to, because like I'm going to school specifically to, I wouldn't call it for permaculture, right? But along those lines, right? Specifically, I'm going for like rhizospheric interactions between, plant roots and the mycelium and the mycorrhizae in the soil. What that is all about is taking care of, is getting away from the model that we want, so we get, and it's instead we get, so we use.
Right.
Right? I think that's what you were getting at, right? Like, I've kind of complained on this show multiple times about our thoughts around corn and our thoughts around soy, and it's just like this overproduct. We have so many acres of land in the United States, and most of it is used for those two things, right? And then beef is the same thing. Like, they're trying to, it's kind of like this Icarus like hubris of, well, all these people need to eat this beef, right? When it doesn't make any kind of logical sense, man. No. It just doesn't make any logical sense, right? If you look at it, right? So like when producers, right, they photosynthesize, right? So all of the energy is in the plants, and then you go up a level and you pack it into a cow, right? And you get 10% of the photosynthesized energy, and the rest is off to this and that and this and that. And then you use one cut of that cow. What are you doing? Sorry.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Sorry. I just, it's like one of those things that we kind of like. I've had farmers on here, and I'm having a soil scientist on soon, but we only kind of just touch on it, right? And I kind of talk about like, yeah, it's like, there's like studies that say, and it's like, no, it's like all the studies say this, right? And there needs to be a move towards that, or we're no longer going to be able to sustain the population that we have, right? You hit a nerve when you were like, we have people to feed. It's like, that's the reality of it. It's going to get to a point where it's like, it's already getting to a point where it's like, we don't have that.
Yeah.
We don't have that. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? I mean, I'm starting to see, like, I'm looking for jobs, right, for when I get out of school, and the kind of things that I can do. And Cargill, right, is looking for soil scientists for, they're kind of starting to get the hint. I think their pocketbooks are starting to get hit, and they're like, oh, we need to change the game plan in a big way.
Yeah.
It's so, dude, sorry, man. I got really aggressive about it, but it's like, I think that when you're a cook, right? I talked about it in this episode with Aaron. You depend on those people. You depend on that system, right? And if they don't do their job in a beautiful way, like we were talking about, if they don't express the food in a beautiful way, I'm not going to be able to express the food in a beautiful way.
Yeah, and second of all, like, really, actually, most importantly, raising good ingredients.
Yeah.
Because again, people are already afraid of getting sick, and we want to have like clean ingredients that we can trust to put in our body, and the American farming system is kind of ruined it, because they want quantity and high yield, and so they pack it full of chemicals, and we ultimately put that in us and our children, and it's not the way to go. I mean, we already knew it wasn't the way to go, but this is where people had the mindset of profit.
Yeah, it's definitely a profit mind. I mean, that's the main issue across the board with any kind of cooking, is that there's always some, you're a slave to that, no matter where in this industry you are. Like, if you're in the U.S., you're a slave to that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess there are some people who are getting out of that, right? But they are going bottom up, like they are going from the bottom up, I should say. Like, I talk about Dan Barber kind of constantly, but like, that's the only way to do it, right? Like, everything works in sync and in harmony with itself. The whole farm raising operation is done to make the best ingredients, and then I sell those ingredients based on what I need to continue. I mean, honestly, that's the dude who inspired me to go to school for what I'm going to school for, because it's like, it seems so obvious, that that's what needs to be done. But when you get down to brass tacks with people are so on the other side, and on the, this is the way that we've been doing it, for 50 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, 50 years?
No, it's not about running out of resources is one thing, but you have to be able to then learn how to replenish those resources.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. I mean, and there's all these other problems that go along with it, like eutrophication and desertification, and a lot of climate change has to do with the agricultural industry, not just the methane from the cows, but the fact that we don't have good soil that's supporting photosynthesizing plants to then it's what they call a positive feedback loop, right? This happens and this happens and this gets worse and this gets worse. So I think with people who are in cooking, right, for cooks, right, we used to be these guys on the line in a basement, doing this one aspect of the food creation process. And we started on this journey of like, oh, I can only do so much with this because it's, wherever it's from, right? Yeah. It's U.S. Foods, or
it's a tomato from U.S. Foods.
Yeah. It's like it tastes like water, and I can't do anything with it, right? Yeah. And then we taste our first, Minnesota tomato, because Minnesota has great tomatoes, some of the best in the world in terms of like the genes and the climate for summer tomatoes. You taste that tomato and you're like, what, dude? What? I need more of this, right? And then you go on this journey, and then you end up kind of in my position, or kind of in your position, where we're trying to figure out how to... We're only work with the best ingredients that we can, because that's what cooking is really truly about. We can't dance if there's no music, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so... Yeah, I mean that's one thing about the show, is I want to like reach the people who are stuck in a kitchen right now, and they're stuck in that like mindset of like, well, I just need to get through this year of the pandemic, and show them that there are other ways to live their lives. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that most cooks have that love and that passion, and to follow the ingredients, I think, is the way to go.
Yeah, I think so too. And, maybe the movement has to be where we take restaurants and turn them into hubs for, not necessarily just the preparation of food, but the entire cycle.
Yeah. Go into that. What do you mean the entire cycle?
So, French Meadow, I've been talking with the chef a little bit, and he says that there's space in the building of which he is currently kind of working on an idea of like building aquaponics.
Yeah.
And growing ingredients in there, because essentially a city is a food desert.
Yeah.
Everything comes from outside. Like there's no fertile soil per se inside downtown Minneapolis to St. Paul.
Right.
So you would have to create an environment to be able to grow something.
Yeah.
I think he's onto something with that. I know there are other countries in the world which they do a lot of like greenhousing or rooftop things, and that's good for if you have sunshine and warm temperature all year round. But then to supplement for here when we have our winter, you have to do things indoors.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good idea.
I think that's a great idea, and I think that what will probably end up happening is that idea hybrids with a lot of the stuff that's going on due to COVID, and a lot of the stuff that's going on, especially in Minneapolis, due to civil unrest, right? Where we have these conglomerations of different restaurants starting to become a community, and starting to kind of like, oh, you need a chef here. Okay, well, I got to cook here, right? You see it a lot on Grand Avenue right now. Oh, you need this, that, and this and that. Okay, I'll call, it's like Justin is really good at doing that and networking people. And then you add that, like, oh, we have it all here. Oh yeah, I mean I think that's a great idea, and I hope that he finds at least some success with that.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break, and we can get right back into it on this subject, ideas for the future, because I don't want to be kind of like a doom and gloom podcast ever.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think that we're doomed. I just think that we kind of we have to start thinking outside of the box because we're kind of like late to the game, right?
Yeah, and if sustainability is the catchword, for the future, it's about those moves.
Yeah. All right, let's take a break. Get right back into it.
Okay.
Yeah, man. So here's the thing. This isn't even brainstorming. You know what I mean? This is what. I think this is what a lot of chefs are doing right now, is they're trying to figure out, where do I fit into this new sustainable model, right? So I keep bringing up Carla Mertz, right? She did Iron Shoe Farms, and she had a bunch of chefs out there multiple times throughout the summer and then once in the fall for harvest. And they would use all ingredients from that county, right? So it would be either from her farm or from a farm down the road, or, and at the same time, she was employing 17 chefs for the day.
Yeah.
Right? And there was some aspect of luxury about some of them, right? Because they were some of them were tasting menus, right? But then those chefs would, it's like those chefs would get funding to then, go and do the stuff that we were talking about, where I was I'm in the city and I'm cooking for 160 people because they're out protesting and it's fucking 400 degrees outside,
Right.
So I think that is one thing that we need to start getting better at, is actually going to the farm, right? They are there. Minnesota has a lot of real estate in that regard, right? That's not that far away. Princeton is only, I think it's only maybe a half hour away from where we are right now. It's only 20 minutes away from my house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And instead of the farms selling to supply chains, I know they sell to restaurants, but not all of their ingredients get bought up. So they're no matter what, they plant their full season, but not every single vegetable or fruits is going to be sold.
Yeah.
And it's about using everything, and they try to give them away in CSAs and such.
Yeah.
But I feel like you can have a crop, but a lot of it gets wasted because it doesn't get purchased or used up.
Yeah. I think so. Here's my response to that. I think that for cooks and for chefs, really this is a chef thing, right? When you're making a menu, we need to start moving into the world of, using every part of the buffalo, for lack of a better all-catch term, right? I talk about how I would ferment the mushroom roots at Public, and then we would use that fermentation liquid for all this other stuff, right? So there was no part of the mushroom that we actually wasted. Everything was turning into some kind of product. And so to do that and to build your menus in a way where it's not, okay, we're going to have lobster, we're going to have steak, we're going to have chicken, we're going to have, we're going to have a pasta, we're going to have something that everybody, everybody and their mom will
50 item menu, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to get the ingredients to support that entire 50 items, even if only, 20 of them sell.
And yes, and on top of that, they're not related to each other.
Right.
Right? It's not like you have 5 different tomato dishes.
Yeah.
Right? And here, I'm pulling it out. I'm finally pulling it out, okay? So Charlie Trotters. We're gonna go right to the goddamn beginning, all right? Because people need to get this, right? Tomatoes. Tomato dish, tomato dish, tomato dish, tomato dish, tomato, right? And then all of those dishes can be used in tandem, like especially during the summer, right? He doesn't do a seasonal dish. He goes, okay, we have this ingredient. How are we going to build a menu
around it?
Around it, right? And so then what you get is you get this new line of thinking, and you get this ability for the farmer to go, oh, I have tomatoes right now. Okay, well, it goes back to our skilled labor thing, right? Like, okay, now it's the skill set that you're using is not, or it shouldn't be, these people want this. How am I going to gather this from the corners of the earth? It goes, oh, the farmer has this. How am I going to make these people enjoy what I have?
Yeah, it's just getting creative with it.
Yeah. And that's honestly the most enjoyable part of cooking for me, is using that creativity and having a 7-part menu that uses the same ingredient in every single dish, right? And you can see it when restaurants do it properly. Their profit margins go up, just because logically that should be how it works, right? You don't have to buy all this different stuff, and you don't have all this risk for waste. And what if people don't like this? Well, if they don't like this, we're going to sell the product in this, you know what I mean? So,
right.
Yeah. So do you think that I'm just being foolhardy, or do you think I'm onto something with that?
I think we should be onto something with it. Like, it's the right move. It's the right way of thinking.
Yeah.
It should catch more influence. I think there is a mass of people who are educated about this now, but it's implementing.
Yeah.
Like making it grow and become a community wide and nationwide thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to like what you're saying on the line there. Now it's about executing and communicating, right? We have the idea, we have what we need to do, we know generally the format. Now just execute.
Yeah.
Right. And we'll see. I guess we'll see how that goes. Well, honestly, okay. Can we talk about your juice idea?
Sure.
A little bit. So let's get into the juice idea, right? And then we'll call it a day for the show, and hopefully I can have you back on again.
Yeah, I'd be happy to come back.
All right, sweet. Let's talk about juice.
Okay, so after some contemplation, and so in the beginning of the year, I was working as an executive chef for the Bad Waitress in Northeast, and the whole reason why I was there was to reconcept it to be a kind of upscale restaurant, upscale casual, and they had me as the executive chef, and I drew out a menu and everything, and they had consultants, and we're almost live.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and this turned into me being furloughed, and then they were taken over by Morrissey Hospitality Group, and while I was furloughed, they decided to hire or transfer one of their people from one of the restaurants that they had lost into my position.
Wow.
And it's just like, I didn't expect that at all. I thought, like, I put a lot of effort into that.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, wow, this is restaurants. And it turns out a few months later, I start working again at French Meadow just to have some form of income.
Right.
But I also hear, from somebody who was working there, that one day they had laid off everybody at that central Northeast location. I don't think it did. I'm not sure exactly, but I don't think they succeeded in their project.
Right.
Because times have changed, and people aren't going out as much.
Yeah.
Even with your 50% capacity, you're really, it's a much bigger risk to sustain a business like that.
Right.
I'm lucky that French Meadow has 35 years of established, business
Yeah.
And they have a lot of regular customers, and they've been in touch with every single delivery service out there, but still their numbers are diminished.
Right.
And this took me down a path of thinking, you know what? Nobody needs a $12 avocado toast.
Yeah.
You don't need that.
Yeah.
You can buy, 3 avocados, a loaf of bread, and everything else for that $12. So I'm thinking, you know what? I'm not feeding people who are hungry. I'm feeding people who have extra money to go out and buy these things and have it even delivered to them. Like, they don't have to, and it's not as big of an impact as I would like to make as a person who understands, production of food. So my juice idea came about, and I'm working on making a bottled raw cold pressed juice that it's just packed full of nutrition.
Yeah.
And I want it available to everybody.
Yeah.
So just good healthy stuff that because it's hard for a person to eat several servings of the fruits and vegetables you need per day. Like, it takes to buy each one separately,
right,
and then to cook it all, and then eat them all. It takes time. It takes a lot of bites.
Yeah.
And so I think I want to make it a 16-ounce bottle of juice. And the name we came out with it is kind of cute. It's called Heartbeat.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay.
So beets are one of the ingredients. Beets are full of antioxidants. They also carry nitric oxide, which increases the oxygen in the bloodstream, so giving a person more energy, more stamina. And then the other ingredients I want to include are baby kale, blueberries, lemons, ginger, and what else? Spearmint.
Oh, yeah.
And then agave is the sweetener.
Okay.
But yeah, I just want one. Oh, and also carrots. So, but I just want this bottled juice to be able to reach any corner it can, for people to just have this nutrient dense drink that's easy to take with them and feel good about drinking. Gives them energy, gives them maybe boost their immune system, just better life overall. And
I love that. And so you're planning on it not being a luxury priced item, is what it sounds like to me, right?
Correct.
And you're going to do that by having as much control over the production of each ingredient as you can.
Yeah. And so far, I'm still working out the details, but I know beets and carrots and kale can be grown readily around here, and they're hardy.
Yeah. I didn't grow kale this year, but I did beets and carrots, and they turn out great in Minnesota soil, especially if it's not if you have I don't know, they get great in Minnesota soil. And as well, I had people who are gardening next to me who grew a lot of kale, right? Same with the spearmint. I know a woman who she had too much spearmint, right?
Yeah.
Growing in her backyard. It was pretty great.
Yeah, and it might be hard to procure blueberries and spearmint and lemons year round, but I will be able to at least ethically source them.
Yeah. Well, there's the ethical part of it, and there's maybe we can't get it year round, or there's one aspect of it that comes from other places, but just that move towards, oh well, we can get 3 out of the 6 ingredients readily available, but at Iron Chew, for instance, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a kick-ass direction to start off in. Now, I've talked to you a little bit about my new venture that I'm starting, right? And I'm starting it, people, okay? I'm starting it. It's not finished, right? There's a lot of work to do around it, but I'm going to start a line of fermented products, right? So lacto fermentation, fruit leathers, So much. Koji and everything that goes along with koji, except I'm not going to do sake just because I'm sober. It just doesn't make sense for me to do like anything that gets you drunk, right? I guess I could make a non-alcoholic one, but that's neither here nor there. But the kombucha and sourdough starters as well, right? And there's like a huge array of things that I could actually do, but basically I'm going to build a koji box, right, and do koji, and then I'm going to build a lacto fermentation chamber and do lacto ferments, right, and then do large scale kombucha with I have a couple ideas for Mother, but to add that into your winter plan, right? Some kind of fermentation product. Yeah, obviously you don't have to buy it from me, but there's other people who are doing it, right?
Yeah.
That can further the sustainability aspect, make it cheaper for you, and therefore make it cheaper for the people who are, who you want to affect. Because I see it, I hear it in your voice when you say it. You're not looking for some quick, rich scheme. Like, you just want to feed people.
Right.
And I think it's a fantastic idea to be able to feed people through just straight up like a power shot of nutrients to the face that's delicious.
Yeah.
Right. And then fermentation products are obviously very, very good for that. So.
Yeah, and people are really starting to learn about gut health, and and to have a product for that. I mean, especially created right here by yours truly. Like I really see it working.
Yeah. I'm super excited about it. Well, I'm excited about a lot of stuff that we talked about on this episode. I'm excited about your juice, right? Heartbeat. Keep your ear to the ground, because I will definitely. I mean, I don't know if you saw what I did with Adam's chocolate, but I shouted it from the rooftops because if I can get behind a product, right? I'm a cook in Minnesota, so I've spent my whole life not being behind products, and now there's products I can get behind. Heartbeat, right?
Yeah.
Where are you at in the process, if you don't mind me asking, if you don't mind me putting it out there?
Where I'm at in the process is so far just starting the LLC and having an account to run from, and then the next step is developing the formula. I've already got it pretty much worked out, but like I need to purchase a cold press juicer and get it dialed in, just completely dialed in before really full production. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's super exciting. It's super exciting. I love it. So there's that. The juice I love. Fermented products I love, but I also like that we brought up aquaponics. And I'm going to have next week Friday, I'm having R&R mushroom cultivators on, and they grow their mushrooms in blocks.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like there are all these ways to modernly adapt to this agricultural crisis that we're kind of like coming up to, especially in the city.
Yeah, think about all the empty spaces there are. Like we could turn them into like food growing facilities.
Yeah, we totally could. I mean, I was talking about it with you that I could do the ferments out of a place in here, right? Because obviously there's a lot of regulation around that kind of stuff, and I wouldn't want to do that from my house, but there's plenty of buildings like this.
Yeah.
Right? And like you said, where French Meadow has this set up with a building like that, it's like there's I talked to Adam Hurt last week, and I don't think you don't know him, but he does chocolate, right? And he talked about it. I didn't know that he had done this, but when he started his actual business, the chocolate business, it was because the people he partnered with wanted a bunch of chocolate. And he's like, I'll tell you what, if you provide the equipment and the facility, I'll make the chocolate for you.
Yeah. Right?
And they're like, oh, okay, we have the money, and we think that it's a profit-making thing, and he just set it up. And it's not this huge factory. If you guys watch the episode, there's a little bit tour of the kind of tools that he uses. But they facilitated everything, and he's created this business off of it, and he makes phenomenal products out of it. And I think that's a great example of just it was a coffee shop, but now it's all these other different things because these people have partnered and kind of tapped into that community aspect we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just putting all the skills to work. It's great.
Yeah.
And in ways where it's not out of the old environment where it was just a lot of exertion of energy that didn't really come back to you. I feel like it's good to streamline to where it's like, okay, we're just conscious about we make this thing, and it's not even about selling it necessarily. It's putting it out there for people to enjoy.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And you're right. It's that is what the old world was constant output for. It was all about output. It was all about yield. It was all about get as much of it out there as possible and then worry about quality.
Yeah, because we're living beings. We always need to eat.
Yeah.
It's never going to go away.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we started to... What happened in the restaurants is you're trying to match this output, and the people who are paying for that output were the cooks.
Yeah.
Right? It goes back down to that pay scale, right? Like, because you brought up salaried employees. Oftentimes, the salaried employees, if you broke down the math for what they were doing hourly, they were making less than the $14 an hour people. Like maybe they were making $45,000 a year, but
right.
But
if you counted to 60-hour weeks,
yeah, or more,
right?
Often more, right? I mean there were times where I would go in to the Lexington at 8 a.m. and leave at midnight, and Christina had been there since before I had gotten there and was there rolling pasta when I left.
Yeah.
And so I think those were the people who were paying for it, and now everybody's starting to like get hit by that paying for it, and so they're like, okay, something needs to change, and I think we're starting to see a change. Yeah. Dude, what a great episode. This is what I want the show to be like every time. Good conversation, good subjects, and I think that we've hit some positive adaptations that we can do in the future, and thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, Andrew Vuong, everybody. I will see y'all next week. Thank you.
Lost light stencils my heart. Lovers remember my old home sun burning of my memory. My shovel writes a new song. I can almost hear them singing along as I keep digging away. Her love rubbed me raw, methamphetamine, alcohol, if only left me stay. dollars and cents. Taking off to St. Paul, and I will surely spend it all on Hope Street, the last house on